A $3.2 million retirement payout landed in my hands after 3 decades at Morrison Engineering. Clutching my briefcase and the award plaque they'd just presented to me, I headed home 2 hours ahead of schedule, eager to catch my wife off guard with the news. The moment I stepped inside, her voice drifted down from upstairs. She was on the phone, calmly saying, "Relax. Once the divorce is finalized, we'll get at least half, maybe even more if his attorney turns out to be useless." I stopped cold at the base of our oak staircase, the very steps where we'd posed for Christmas photos for 28 years, the same staircase where I'd carried her in my arms after we bought this house back in 1997. "My name is Robert Mitchell. I'm 62 years old." Just hours earlier, I had received the retirement package I'd worked my entire life toward. 30 years of 12-hour shifts, weekend assignments, and countless missed family dinners had led to that single moment. My boss, Frank, had gripped my hand with tears in his eyes, telling me I deserved every cent. The company had organized a celebration in my honor. My coworkers handed me a gold watch. I drove home with the signed documents resting on the passenger seat, picturing Linda's expression when I'd tell her we were finally truly set for life. Instead, I stood in my own foyer, overhearing my wife map out my financial ruin. I didn't climb the stairs. I didn't call her out. I gently placed my briefcase down, walked back to my car, and drove 3 miles to a quiet coffee shop. My hands trembled so violently I could hardly keep hold of my phone. For the next hour, I sat there, replaying our entire marriage in my mind. Had there been warning signs? Absolutely. Over the past year, Linda had grown distant. She began going to the gym 5 times a week. New outfits appeared in her closet, a fresh haircut. For the first time in 30 years, she locked her phone with a password. When I questioned it, she laughed. "Robert, everyone uses passwords now. Don't be so outdated." And I believed her, because I trusted her. Because I had spent 3 decades building a life beside her. As I sat there in that coffee shop, a critical detail suddenly clicked. Linda had no idea about the retirement package yet. The official notice wasn't scheduled to reach my company email until the following day. There was no way she could have known about the $3.2 million, which meant the divorce had already been in motion. She must have been expecting only my standard pension. The payout was a surprise, one she had somehow just discovered. I took out my phone and called my colleague Dave. "Dave," I said, forcing my voice to remain calm, "I need to ask you something. Who can access employee retirement files before they're officially released?" There was a brief silence. "Only HR and the executive team." "Why? Can you check if anyone opened my file in the last 24 hours? Another pause. "Rob, that could get me into serious trouble." "Dave, please. This really matters." 10 minutes later, my phone rang. "Your file was opened yesterday at 2:15 p.m. by Margaret Chen in HR, he said. Then he hesitated. "But there's more. The document was forwarded to an outside email address. Do you have the address?" "It was sent to David Thompson at thompsonfinance.com. David Thompson Financial Consulting." Right there at the table, I searched the name. A polished website appeared, featuring a professional headshot of a man in his early 40s, fit, confident, flashing a reassuring smile. His listed services included retirement planning, divorce financial strategy, asset protection, and wealth management. I leaned back slowly. So that was the person she'd been speaking to. Not just some ordinary advisor, a specialist in divorce finances. And someone from HR, Margaret Chen, had unlawfully sent him my private records. Margaret Chen. I knew her. She'd been at Morrison for 5 years. I'd never noticed her being particularly close to Linda. But then again, I'd never really looked. I'd been consumed with work. 3 hours later, I returned home. Linda stood in the kitchen preparing dinner, acting as though the world hadn't shifted beneath my feet. She greeted me with a smile the moment I stepped inside. "You're home late," she said lightly. "How was your day?" I studied her, truly studied her. This was the woman I had loved for 28 years, the mother of my children, the person around whom I had built my entire adult life. "It was fine," I replied evenly. "Just finishing up a few last projects." I didn't mention the retirement package. I didn't mention anything at all. I went upstairs, changed out of my work clothes, then returned for dinner. We ate lasagna, watched television, went to bed, and through it all, one thought kept pounding in my head. I needed a plan. At 6 a.m. the next morning, I slipped out of bed while Linda was still asleep. I drove to a law office in the neighboring town, 30 minutes away from anyone who might recognize us. The attorney's name was Patricia Morrison. No connection to my former employer. I'd found her online. She handled high-asset divorce cases. Patricia was in her mid-50s, with sharp eyes and an even sharper suit. I laid everything out for her: the retirement payout, the phone call I'd overheard, the HR file being forwarded outside the company. She leaned back in her chair. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to be very straightforward with you. Your wife intends to divorce you and claim half of your retirement package, possibly more if she argues she supported your professional success, which in a 28-year marriage she likely can." She paused, then continued. "However, we have several important advantages. First, she doesn't know you're aware of her plan. Second, the HR employee who shared your confidential file violated federal privacy laws. That's a serious offense. Third, if we can establish that your wife is romantically involved with this financial consultant, that qualifies as adultery, and Virginia still factors that into divorce rulings. And fourth, you haven't officially received the funds yet. The paperwork may be complete, but per company policy, the transfer won't occur for another 30 days. I swallowed. So what should I do? Patricia gave me a smile, one that carried no warmth at all. It was the kind of smile worn by someone who had walked away victorious from countless battles. "You play along," she said calmly. "Act completely normal. Gather evidence. In 30 days we'll structure that retirement package so it's protected in ways she won't be able to reach." I walked out of her office carrying a precise set of instructions. Document everything. Record conversations where legally permitted. Hire a private investigator. Don't transfer any money. Don't update passwords. And above all, don't let her sense that I knew. For the next week, I became the unsuspecting husband. I attended farewell lunches with coworkers. I packed up my office. I brought home desk plants and framed engineering awards. Linda helped me arrange a small office space at home. She was affectionate, engaged, curious about my plans. "I was thinking we could finally take that trip to Italy," she said one evening over a glass of wine. "You've always dreamed of seeing Rome." "That sounds amazing," I replied. "We should start planning." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm so proud of you, Robert. 30 years. You gave it everything." I returned the gesture. "We built this life together." The words felt like ash on my tongue. At the same time, I retained a private investigator named Marcus Shaw. He was a former police detective in his late 50s, professional, measured, discreet. I handed him David Thompson's details. I gave him Linda's weekly schedule. I told him to spare no expense. 4 days later, Marcus called. "Mr. Mitchell, I've gathered what you're looking for. Can you come by my office?" I drove there immediately. A thick folder sat waiting on his desk. Inside were photographs. Linda and David Thompson having lunch at a restaurant in Richmond, 40 miles from our house. Linda and David Thompson walking into a hotel together. Clear timestamps. Clear dates. The relationship had been going on for 7 months. "There's more," Marcus continued. I looked deeper into Thompson. He focuses on helping wives secure the highest possible divorce settlements. On his site, he calls it pre-divorce asset analysis. In reality, he evaluates marital finances and strategizes how to pull out maximum value before papers are filed. Marcus flipped through his notes. He's been tied to at least 12 divorces in the last 3 years. In 10 of them, his female clients walked away with well over half of the assets. Different methods, shielding funds before filing, timing the separation strategically. In 2 situations, there's indication he advised the wives to build documentation implying financial control or emotional abuse by the husband. He paused. He's intelligent, extremely cautious, but he's also motivated by money. He charges a percentage of whatever settlement he helps secure. I stared down at the photographs. Linda laughing with him. Linda kissing him in a hotel parking lot. Linda resting her hand on his arm like she used to rest it on mine. "Get me everything," I said quietly. "Every meeting, every message, Every detail. Already working on it, Marcus replied. When I returned home, Linda was in the kitchen cooking my favorite pot roast. She asked how my day had gone. I told her I'd spent the afternoon playing golf. She didn't question it. Why would she? In 28 years, I had never once lied to her. That night, I lay beside her in bed, staring up at the ceiling. A part of me wanted to turn to her, confront her, demand the truth, but Patricia's words repeated in my mind. Don't let her know you're aware. Collect proof. Safeguard yourself. So I stayed silent. 2 weeks after my retirement, the official announcement was released. I was in my home office when Linda walked in, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. "Robert," she said, slightly out of breath. "I just saw on Facebook, Morrison gave you a retirement package. How much is it?" I had been ready for this moment. Patricia had made sure of that. "It's a little complicated," I replied evenly. "It's more of a pension restructuring, some upfront payout, some annuity adjustments. They're still finalizing the figures. But roughly how much?" she pressed. I gave a casual shrug. "After taxes and setting up the annuity, probably around 800,000 available immediately. The remainder will be distributed over the next 20 years. For just a split second, her expression shifted. She had been expecting $3.2 million. "Oh," she said, quickly recovering. "Well, that's still amazing. We can accomplish a lot with 800,000. "We can," I agreed, "although most of it should stay invested if we're serious about long-term retirement." "We can," I agreed, "although most of it should stay invested if we're serious about long-term retirement." She nodded, but I could practically see her recalculating behind her eyes, adjusting numbers, reshaping expectations. That night, I heard her on the phone again. Following Patricia's advice and Virginia's one-party consent law, I had installed a recording device in our bedroom. Linda stepped into the bathroom, turned on the faucet for cover, and made the call. "It's less than we thought," she said. "He's claiming 800,000 up front. The rest is structured payments." A pause. "I know, but we can't delay anymore. I turn 60 next year. We need to file soon." "Yes, I get that the timing isn't ideal, but okay. Thursday works." The next morning, I played the recording for Patricia. She listened without interrupting. "Good," she said at last. "This clearly demonstrates intent and coordination. Here's our next move. The retirement funds will transfer in 12 days. Once they hit your account, we immediately place them into a protected trust we're establishing this week. It's completely legal, specifically structured for retirement assets under Virginia law, and extremely difficult to penetrate." She folded her hands on her desk. "Then we file for divorce first." I blinked. "I file?" "Absolutely. In Virginia, the spouse who files first holds a strategic advantage. You determine the jurisdiction. You frame the narrative. You control the opening move. And most importantly," Patricia continued, "with solid evidence of adultery and financial collusion, you'll be the one in control. She'll be the one reacting." I exhaled slowly. "What about the house? Our savings? Everything else?" Patricia turned her laptop toward me and pulled up a spreadsheet. "Your home is valued at roughly 900,000. There's 200,000 in joint savings. Your 401k holds about 400,000. Hers is closer to 80,000. 2 vehicles, both paid off. A few additional investment accounts." She looked up at me. In a typical Virginia divorce, she'd likely walk away with around half of the marital assets. She tapped the desk lightly. "But this isn't typical. She's committed adultery, which Virginia courts still weigh. She's conspired with her lover to strategically position herself financially. There's documented intent to manipulate asset division. We're going to push for a 60-40 split in your favor, and I'm confident we can achieve it." "And the retirement package?" I asked quietly. "If structured properly, it becomes separate property. It's compensation for your personal labor over 30 years. The trust we're establishing will shield it. She'll challenge it, of course. But given her misconduct, her leverage is limited." I leaned back in my chair. "When do we file?" "The day after the funds clear your account. By then, the trust will be active, the petition prepared, and the evidence organized. It will blindside her." For the next 12 days, I performed flawlessly. I talked with Linda about travel plans for retirement. We discussed eventually selling the house and downsizing. She even brought home brochures for senior living communities. All the while, she was planning her exit. And all the while, I was securing the life I'd spent 3 decades building. Marcus maintained surveillance. He recorded 3 additional meetings between Linda and David Thompson. He uncovered documentation showing Thompson had encouraged Linda to begin keeping notes about so-called financial control, suggesting I handled all monetary decisions and kept her uninformed. It was fiction. Linda had always had unrestricted access to every account we owned. She had simply never cared to handle them. Now Thompson was guiding her step by step, helping her construct a narrative of financial control. The thought of it made my blood burn. On the 12th day, the retirement funds landed in my account at Morrison Federal Credit Union, $3.2 million. I watched the balance update on my phone at exactly 9:15 a.m. By 10:30, Patricia had moved every dollar into the newly established Robert Mitchell Retirement Trust. By 11 o'clock, the trust was fully secured and protected under Virginia law. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, Linda was served with divorce papers at our house. I wasn't there. Patricia had insisted I stay at a hotel. One of Marcus's associates delivered the documents and discreetly recorded Linda's reaction. She was stunned, utterly blindsided. Within minutes, she called David Thompson. Shortly after, she contacted an attorney. By 5 p.m., her lawyer left Patricia a voicemail. Patricia played it for me. The man sounded rattled and irritated. He asked about the retirement funds. He suggested negotiations. The following morning, Patricia returned the call while I sat across from her desk. She placed it on speaker. "My client is open to discussing a settlement," she said evenly. "However, you should be aware that we possess substantial evidence of Mrs. Mitchell's adultery with Mr. David Thompson, photographs, hotel documentation, and recorded conversations outlining deliberate plans to increase her financial gain through fabricated claims of abuse." There was a long pause on the other end. "And in addition," Patricia continued, her tone steady, "we have proof that Mrs. Mitchell accessed confidential information regarding Mr. Mitchell's retirement package through unlawful channels. An HR employee at Morrison Engineering forwarded private documents directly to Mr. Thompson. We are fully prepared to move forward with criminal charges against Mr. Thompson and the HR employee if required." Silence filled the line again. Patricia didn't waver. "Here is our proposal. Mrs. Mitchell will receive 40% of the marital assets, excluding the retirement package. That means 40% of the home equity, 40% of the joint savings, her entire 401k, and one of the vehicles. The retirement funds will remain Mr. Mitchell's separate property within his protected trust. In return, we will not pursue criminal action, nor will we make public the details of her affair or the coordinated attempt to manipulate the settlement." On the other end, the attorney cleared her throat. "I'll need to review this with my client." "You have 48 hours, Patricia replied evenly, and ended the call. I looked at her. "Will she agree?" "She doesn't have much room not to," Patricia said. "If this proceeds to court, she likely receives nothing from the retirement trust, and potentially less than 40% of the remaining assets because of adultery. And then there's the risk of criminal conspiracy. This offer is generous." 46 hours later, the call came. Linda would accept the terms. The following 2 months passed in a haze of legal documents and asset transfers. Linda moved out of the house and into a small apartment. David Thompson vanished the moment his potential criminal exposure became real. Margaret Chen was terminated from Morrison Engineering and now faces charges related to privacy violations. Linda and I met one final time to sign the divorce papers. It took place in Patricia's office. Linda looked different, older, drained. She avoided my gaze. "Robert," she said softly as we stood to leave, "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am." I studied her, the stranger wearing the face of the woman I had once loved. "Why?" I asked quietly. "Just tell me why." She shook her head faintly. "I don't fully know. I felt invisible. You were always working, and David, he made me feel noticed, made me feel young again. It was foolish. I was foolish. You were preparing to ruin me financially," I replied evenly. "That isn't foolish. That's deliberate." "I know," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I know, and I'll carry that with me." Then she turned and walked away. I stood there watching her leave. 28 years. Finished. But I was still standing. The house eventually sold for $920,000. After everything was divided, I walked away with roughly $500,000 from the sale, along with my 401k, my protected retirement fund, and something far more important, my dignity. Linda took her portion and moved to Florida to live near her sister. I purchased a modest home in the Virginia mountains, 3 bedrooms, a small workshop, a sweeping view across the valley. These days, I fill my time with woodworking, long hikes, and volunteering at a nearby veterans center. I rebuilt my relationship with my children, both now in their 20s, and told them the full story. They were hurt, but they understood. They had noticed their mother pulling away long before I had. 6 months after the divorce, my former colleague Dave from IT called me. "Rob, you should probably hear this," he said. "Margaret Chen tried to sue Morrison for wrongful termination. The judge dismissed it." He hesitated. "There's something else. David Thompson is under investigation by the State Financial Board. 2 additional women have come forward with similar claims. He's lost his license." I thanked Dave and ended the call. I didn't feel triumph. Just a quiet acknowledgement that consequences had arrived. I'm 63 now. My retirement is secure. My life is peaceful, and I've been given the chance to start again on my own terms. Some evenings, I still think about Linda, the years we shared, the future we once imagined. But more often, I reflect on how close I came to losing everything, how one overheard phone call preserved the life I had spent decades building. If I could offer advice to anyone facing something similar, it would be this. Don't react on impulse. Don't rush into confrontation. Never destroy bridges before you've collected the truth. When betrayal surfaces, especially the kind tied to money, you don't need rage. You need strategy. You need proof. And above all, you need patience. I could have stormed upstairs that afternoon. I could have yelled, demanded explanations, let my anger take control, and I would have lost everything. She would have had time to prepare. Thompson would have erased trails. The HR employee would have buried her involvement. At best, I'd have walked away with half my retirement, maybe less. Instead, I stayed quiet. I chose discipline over drama. I played the long game. I secured what I had earned, and I prevailed. This isn't the retirement I once pictured 28 years ago when I married Linda, but it is mine, built through 30 years of sacrifice and protected by one clear-headed decision when the truth revealed itself. I chose logic over emotion, and that choice changed everything. Some evenings, I sit on the porch of my mountain home and watch the sun dip behind the valley. I remember the oak staircase in our old house, the Christmas portraits, the plans we once made, and then I think about the $3.2 million resting safely inside my retirement trust. I think about my workshop, my hiking trails, my independence. I think about the future still waiting for me, one grounded in honesty, not deception. And I remind myself how fortunate I was to come home early that day, to hear what I heard, to respond the way I did. I've learned something through all of this. The greatest revenge isn't loud. It isn't explosive. It isn't public. Real victory comes from protecting yourself, safeguarding your future, and walking away with your dignity untouched. Let the legal system deliver justice. Let life handle the rest. I secured my retirement. I reclaimed my freedom. And in the end, that's the only triumph that truly counts. If this story resonated with you, and you believe in strength, strategy, and standing firm when life tests you, make sure to subscribe to A Father's Wrath for more powerful stories like this. Your support means everything, and the next story might just change the way you see your own.